All right. Okay, good morning, everyone. How are we doing? We're about to get started. Everybody hear me okay? See the slides okay? Just a little Y in the chat would help tremendously. Thank you, Denise Gomez. Good morning. Okay, yes, hi. Oh, great. Thank you so much. It's so nice to see so many folks here on this beautiful Friday. So welcome to the second annual CCI Research and Creative Activities Day. This is an event designed to be a continued evolution of CCI's longstanding annual doctoral poster session, with some other wonderful things bookending that activity. We're going to be doing lightning sessions this year, as you know. And based on feedback from the schools, we planned another inclusive day for faculty, students, and special guests, and considered the pressing themes of our knowledge-generating activities. This year, we couldn't help but recognize that our scholarly work transforms communities and that those transformations look different in each CCI school and in each of our roles. So today is our day to meet, reflect, and exchange new ideas to grow ourselves and increase the knowledge and impact in our respective fields. We're recording this session, and the recordings of the various segments will be posted to the CCI YouTube channel. We'll also have transcripts if there's some particularly quotable piece of information that you want to return to. So let's just do a little round of introductions. I'd like to begin by introducing your CCI Research and Creative Activities Steering Committee, which is composed of a representative of each school with an additional participation from our research coordinator, Cherie Pagan, who you'll hear from in just a moment, and the Dean's team. So thank you, Michelle, thank you, Eve, and thank you, Steve, for giving input on this and really helping us make this happen. So I'm Marcia Martis. I'm your Associate Dean for Research. I'm also professor at the School of Information and the director of the FSU Information Institute. But this day could not have been possible without your Research and Creative Activities Steering Committee, which also includes Art Rainey from the School of Communication, Katie Lansford from the School of Communication Science and Disorders, and Caroline Stratton from the School of Information. So at this juncture, I am going to turn it over to our research coordinator, Cherie Pagan, to just make a couple remarks, and then I'm going to get into a bit of our agenda and turn it over to our morning keynote, Lakeisha Johnson. So Cherie, I leave it to you for some kind words.
Morning, everyone. Good to see and hear from all of you. I just wanted to say how excited I am for CCI Research Day. I think this is a wonderful event and really helps us get connected. I just wanted to thank and put a shout out to my CCI research team. We now have 2 grants analysts. One is Brandon Rowland, and he is primarily focused on the iSchool. And then we have Miss Joy Mathis, and she's primarily focused on the school, SCSD, School for Communication and Science Disorders. And I primarily focus on the Office of the Dean and School of Communication. And we are here to help you with any needs you have concerning research, whether it be submitting a proposal, which we love to see a lot of. Right now we have 9 on the docket between now and June 30th to submit. We also love to see you guys resubmit some things. Sometimes the proposal doesn't go as planned, and we want to help you make it better and stronger and resubmit those. As well as we're here for any grant award needs that you have, whether it be budgetary, maybe some issues with travel or procurement, and definitely helping with HR appointments. So we are here for all of those needs. And if you ever have any questions, again, research@cci.fsu.edu. Please let us know if you have any questions. Please let us know if you're planning to submit a proposal as soon as possible. The earlier we get started, the more we can delve into it. And it's the fastest way to get a hold of us. Again, research@cci.fsu.edu. And thank you so much for letting me speak for a few minutes.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew what awesome resources, resources that other units on campus envy and are trying to model, because Cherie's depth of knowledge and just the quality of her team is a support for our research that is just unprecedented elsewhere on campus. So we're so grateful to you, and thank you for taking some time to chat with us this morning.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
All right. Well, Cherie, feel free to stick around as long as you like. I'm giving everybody a little overview of the agenda here. So we are going to start our day with an opening keynote, which I'm very excited about, from Dr. Lakeisha Johnson. Then we're going to shift into the doctoral lightning sessions, and the whole format and flow for that is going to be re-explained. And I know that you got information about it yesterday, but we'll talk a little bit more today about how that's going to be organized and how other people in the audience can participate in that process. And then we'll debrief a little bit from everything that happened in the morning, including the lightning sessions and the keynote. And then I'm going to transition over to an afternoon address, a real fan favorite, judging by all of the feedback I've seen across the internet, from Dr. Chris Constantino, and then we will wrap up and adjourn. So that's our day for today. Our wrap-up time is 1 o'clock. I know that this is being 2 holidays. People are undoubtedly navigating a lot of demands. So we want to make sure that you get your brain replenished before you move on to enjoying all of your holiday food. So let's get this underway. So to start us off, it is my great pleasure to sorry, just had a little technical glitch there, to introduce Lakeisha Johnson, who is an assistant professor in the Communication Science and Disorders program at Florida State University, our School of Communication Science and Disorders, and she's an ASHA certified speech language pathologist. She's also a director of The Village, which is a community outreach and engagement division of the Florida Center for Reading Research, which is one of the most dynamic and active centers on CCI's campus. So that's really exciting. So Dr. Johnson received her doctorate in communication sciences and disorders with an emphasis on literacy implications for culturally and linguistically diverse populations from Florida State in 2012. She's also previously served as a research scientist at Georgia State University in the Urban Child Study Center, where she oversaw several projects related to evaluating and improving language and literacy skills in early childhood settings, and an assistant professor at the University of the District of Columbia. Dr. Johnson's primary research interests include language, literacy, dialect, and executive function development in African American children and other at-risk populations. Her mission is to investigate the aforementioned areas while building and strengthening research practice partnerships between the university and local community to ensure children from vulnerable and underserved populations obtain strong language and literacy skills. Additionally, Dr. Johnson runs a website, Maya's Book Nook, to promote language and literacy skills using diverse children's books. Make sure to give that a Google. Today, Dr. Johnson will share with us Building Bridges, considerations for successful and sustainable research practice partnerships. RPPs, or research practice partnerships, are a growing mechanism to address needs and reduce research and practice gaps that are often present in educational settings. These long-term, collaborative, mutually beneficial partnerships can be used to meet the needs of the community while also advancing scientific knowledge. In her presentation, she'll define RPPs, review best practices for building authentic partnerships, and provide examples of current partnership models. This is a topic near and dear to my heart. So please join me in welcoming and enjoying the words from Dr. Lakeisha Johnson. Lakeisha, I turn it over to you. I'm going to stop my share.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, and good morning to all. Thank you for joining us on this Friday morning. So I'm excited to talk with you. As Marsha said, one of her favorite topics, it's one of my favorites as well. A topic of interest that is really where I do all of my work. So I'm excited to be here and to talk a little bit about RPPs. And even though you may not feel that you're directly connected to educational research, how you can take some of the elements of RPPs to use them in your work. So I'm going to start with a quote from one of my favorite writers, Maya Angelou. The area where we are the greatest is the area in which we inspire, encourage, and connect with another human being. So keep this in mind as we go through the rest of these slides. The theme for today's research conference is transforming the future. And I want you all to think about whether you're a faculty member, a research scientist, a doctoral student, or even a graduate student or undergraduate, depending on who's in our audience today. I want you to reflect on the work you're doing, no matter how big, how small, how rigorous, but think about and consider how you can impact your small corner of the world. With the work that you're doing in terms of your research, what impact is it having immediately on the populations that you're researching? What are the challenges in your field? How do you think they can even be addressed? So keep those things kind of in the back of your mind, and we're going to come back to those at the end. And I'll also try to save a few minutes at the end for questions, just in case we have any. So what is an RPP? A research practice partnership is a long-term collaboration. And when you hear the word, it is really truly what it says it is. It is a partnership between researchers. So that could be university professors, research scientists, any and everyone, organizations, federal government, local government, anyone who's doing research. And in this case, educational research. And then the practice, the first P, that is our practitioners. Who are the people who are actually doing the face-to-face application, right? So in our case, it's educators, it's speech language pathologists, like all of my CSD family that are here. Any of the people who are working closely to partner. Practitioners can also be community members, right? These are community stakeholders who are invested in outcomes. And so for educational research practice partnerships, this is long-term collaboration between both the practitioners and the researchers to investigate relevant problems and then find solutions. And so it's slightly different than a lot of the work when you typically hear research, right? Most often we think, I'm the researcher, I've got this amazing idea, I need to go and find some participants, find a willing party who will allow me to collect some data. I'm going to answer this question that informs theory, that may also inform practice, and can make things better for someone else, right? That's usually what we think about. RPPs are slightly different in the sense that it really is a joint, a very formalized joint effort that's between these different parties. And so I like to describe it as when I go into a research practice partnership, I don't necessarily have any already formalized ideas for what I want to happen within this partnership. Myself as the researcher, I'm coming in to be able to find out what the partner needs, right? So it's coming directly straight from what are your needs? And so often when we think about educational research, and we know about the harms that often happen in educational research, especially within vulnerable and marginalized communities, it's important that we think about what are their needs. So whether that's the needs of family, whether that's the needs of educators, whether that's the needs of students in local schools, or whether that's the need of a local organization. And very often when I ask that question, when I first meet a partner, they are so confused. You can imagine the look on their face when you walk into a school and you don't have an already determined agenda, right? When you come in and you say, all right, so what's your biggest pressing issue and how can I help? That is a complete, like, they sit there and you get a full pause. Because most often that's not necessarily the relationship that has been taking place with a lot of the partners that we work with, especially education partners. So RPPs at their core are intentional. So on the screen, you'll see some kind of call out words. They're intentional. They have to have purpose behind them, right? When we start this RPP, it is for a very defined reason. And so we go in with intention. It's also formalized and it's a joint effort. It's between these agencies, in this case, that primarily administer education. So that could be school districts, it could be other local organizations, and then those who research education, like myself, public and private universities, research institutions, or even community groups. The other part that's important about this is we want to be able to impact decision-making through the use of research evidence. So how do we allow our partners or our practitioners who are out there in the field working face-to-face, hand-in-hand with students, with families, with other community partners, how do we give them and allow them to utilize best practices from the research? How do we disseminate it to them in a way that doesn't remain inside of this ivory wall, right? These ivory towers, these four walls of the university building. The other important part is that RPPs feature diverse voices. It's so important to go into them knowing that our practitioners or our partners have very diverse perspectives, and they may come at things from different lenses and viewpoints, which is valued and appreciated. They are also the experts within their setting, right? So often researchers, we may come in and there are these power dynamics. We know that we know a lot about certain subjects, and we may be asked to be that person who serves as the expert. But in RPPs, it's also very important to allow the partners to know that they also have expertise. They know their clients, their families, the communities that they serve best. Me as an outsider, I have to gain that trust, right, in order to be able to form an intentional, authentic partnership. As I said, it's also long-term, right? There is no like, let's do this one thing together. I'm gonna come and do one workshop or a session, and then it's gonna be over. This is a long-term, mutually beneficial relationship. And so of course, there are the benefits that our partner gets from having the expertise of a researcher. And then of course, the R is the first thing in it. This is the research day. We are a research university. I work for a research center, right? At some point, we do also have to do the research. So we want it to be things that are mutually beneficial. And from what I've found, when you build these really intentional, practical, ongoing, long-term partnerships that really have an impact within the local community, our partners are much more willing to then engage in the research side of things, right? So they're way more willing when I then do have this amazing idea or a doctoral student who wants to build on some of the work that we're doing, they're way more receptive because they've trusted us. They know that we're not going to leave. We're not just going to collect the data and then never show up or never hear back. They know that this is a long-standing partnership, and they know that they can trust that we will show up when we say we'll be there. And so a lot of the information that you'll see today within some of the slides comes from one of our flagship organizations on educational research practice partnerships, which is NERP, which I have linked here within the slides. And so NERP is a national network. There are over 60 partners across the United States at different universities and research associations that are working specifically to make impacts within their local community. And so when we think about the principles of RPPs, like I said, long-term collaborations. We want to work towards improving educational outcomes, as well as, here's that word again that goes so perfectly with our theme, transformation, right? What's the equitable transformation that we can make? How do we engage with research as a leading activity? And so knowing that while a lot of what we may do upfront may feel like service, at some point, we're always there on the R side thinking about what is the research activity behind this. You want to be intentional about bringing together expertise from varied partners. And then you want to have strategies to shift power relations to know that everyone has a say in the work that we do. And so when it comes to building these RPPs, you may be thinking, I don't have the time for that, Lakeisha. Like, when am I going to do the work that it takes? And I will be very honest and say that this is time-consuming work, right? You can't expect me as a person, while I went to, as you heard in my bio, I went to graduate school here. I did both the master's and PhD program at Florida State. I worked at a local Title I elementary school as an SLP for several years. I am actively involved within the community through community service and outreach through organizations such as my sorority. But that does not necessarily mean I automatically have an in with the community, right? So I have to do work. And a part of that work that I did with my amazing partner and mentor, Dr. Nicole Patton-Terry, for those of you who do any work in the College of Education, you may be familiar with Dr. Patton-Terry, who is the director of the Florida Center for Reading Research. One of the first things we did when we decided to start The Village, which is our RPP that I'll tell you a little bit more about, is we went on what we called a listening tour. We literally reached out to principals, to organizations across the local community and asked, hey, we're new in town, right? We work together at Georgia State. We have been doing this thing, but we're new here in Tallahassee. We want to establish some partnerships. How can we help you? We want to meet you, take you out to lunch, come by your school, come by your office, and just find out what your biggest needs are. And we did that for a full year. Right? Because you can't like do this all in like 1 week. We do still have to teach and advise students and all the other parts of being a faculty member, right? But we took a full year that we called our listening tour to be able to identify our partners who one showed a mutual interest in the work that we wanted to do, but to also determine what were our channels of communication. What were our expectations for these partnerships? So that was a large part of what we had to do. And a part of that means you have to get out there and be in the community, attend the events. There are going to be things that may not necessarily fall directly in line with maybe some of your research goals and priorities in terms of your agenda. But when you're thinking about work in this way, it's important to always show up, right? And so once you have your partners identified and you kind of have established your channels of communication, how often you're going to meet, and what the expectations are for this partnership, then you got to search for some funding, right? We can't do any of this work. And please believe at the beginning, we did do a lot of the work without any funding sources, but you do want to search for funding, right? And thankfully, a lot of our funding mechanisms are starting to see and value and appreciate the benefits of research like this, implementation science or translational science, where we're actually taking what we know from theory and implementing it or translating it and disseminating it to those who need it most. So you want to search for funding, and then you want to ensure that you can co-define, which means you're going to actually sit at the same table and think about what's our research agenda, right? Like I said, do that needs assessment. What are your strengths as an organization or as a site? What are your weaknesses? Do that SWOT analysis, the opportunities, the threats. Create partnership goals. What's the vision for our partnership? What's our organizational structure, right? And then we need a theory of action. What are our goals and objectives that we're working towards? And how can we describe the process and how we will get there, right? Our goals have to be manageable, and we have to have some expectations for how we achieve them. And so it really is, how will change occur? And how will we know that change has occurred? And so finally, in some of the earlier stages, we then want to establish agreements. And some of that may mean, are we sharing data between our groups? Our local RPP that I'll mention a little bit later, the Village at FCRR, for the first time, FCRR has been around for 20 years. And for the first time, due to the work that we did over the last 3 years, we have a full data sharing agreement with Leon County Schools. That's never happened. And we're able to meet with the leaders and administrators. We speak every semester at least a school board meeting to report out on our partnership efforts, simply because we put in the time and effort up front to establish a meaningful, authentic partnership where now they value and want to ensure that we have a seat at their table when they're making huge decisions. And so establishing those agreements like data sharing, memorandums of understanding, who's doing what, do we need to hire additional people, like all of my amazing doc students who are here, right, who are working on training grants, students who are volunteering with us. How are we going to staff these projects? Who's going to do the work? And so there are some key dimensions. The first, as I said, is really about trust. It is hard to undertake this type of work when it comes to RPPs if there's not trust both ways in the relationship. All of you here at some point, you've engaged in some research, I'm sure. You've gone through city training. You know about research harms. And building trust is extremely important, because without it, your partnership won't have longevity. And then, of course, how will our research inform action? And then how can we support our partners in then achieving their goals? Produce knowledge, of course, because we want to move science forward, which is a part of this transformation. How do we keep moving forward? And then finally, we want to build capacity, which is often one of the challenges of RPPs, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But we want to build capacity in our stakeholders and our partners as well. And so once we've built the partnership, we feel real good about life, right? We've got monthly meetings, we know our goals, we've got our theory of action, we've implemented some small scale research projects that are helping to meet and answer the questions that our partners have, right? But how do we sustain them? Some of the things that happen quite often with RPPs, because there are long-term partnerships, is that funding may leave, right? What do you do? How do you sustain this partnership? How do you sustain communication and engagement? For those of us who are faculty members, how do you manage this type of work while also teaching and advising and working on other projects, right? Because this may not be the only line of research that you have. So how do we ensure that the lines of communication stay open? We can also sustain by having knowledge brokers, which is relatively new in the RPP field, but it's a critical part of the work, because knowledge brokers are kind of the piece to the puzzle that serves in the middle on that research to practice gap. So it's a bridge or a connector, that person who has a foot in both worlds, the person who can be the liaison, who can translate research to practice and then connect both parties in ways that maybe perhaps policymakers, researchers, practitioners may not understand or may have different viewpoints or perspectives. So knowledge brokers are really helpful in sustaining your RPPs. And then finally, you want to ensure that you want to do something to know if they've been effective or not. And NERP, the National Network of Education Research Practice Partnerships, has a lot of information on how do you measure the effectiveness of your RPP. You have to, whether that's doing some surveys, whether that's some qualitative data that's collected through semi-structured interviews or focus groups. How do you know that what you're doing is working? Did you set SMART goals in your theory of action? where you know that you've actually met them. So you want to make sure you're measuring effectiveness. And then you want to think about, how do we mitigate any challenges that may be ahead? Because there may be a lot of them. Now, I've already said there is a large time commitment. As Marcia said, I'm the director of a center, which means, or a division within a center, which means I spend a lot of time in meetings. It takes time to build true, authentic partnerships. That may mean, hey, Dr. Johnson, can you come judge this spelling bee? Can you come to our literacy night? Oh, we're having this cool block party for Halloween. Can the village show up? Thankfully, we have an amazing team around us that's able to help that kind of thing happen, because it's an important part of the partnership. So you have that time commitment, but we also know sustainability, as I said, can be a challenge. Equipping and building capacity in partners is sometimes difficult, because sometimes our partners may get too reliant on the researcher, right? You want to ensure that as you're doing the work, as you're building capacity in them to implement science within their respective settings, you're building capacity for them to feel like they can continue this work beyond you, right? If one person leaves the RPP on either side, will it all fall apart, right? We want to ensure we're setting systems and having systems in place where that doesn't happen. And then for many of you who are like me, who are early career academics and still on the tenure track line, this is a constant battle and shift in my mind that I some days feel I'm doing okay with, and other days I'm not, right? I can be completely honest and say that there is a challenge when it comes to doing this work and having to ensure that you're meeting the requirements for making tenure within your respective programs and colleges and at the university level. Are you still writing and publishing enough? Like I said, we took a full year for a listening tour. That meant I didn't have as much time for writing, right? Or I had to carve out and ensure I could figure out how to do these other things. And so there's some really, really good articles from people who have done this. And in the last year, I think I've gotten a lot better by ensuring the work that we're doing within our RPP is also very much aligned with my individual research agenda, with some smaller projects that I can get data from quickly that can be published to help move along on the tenure track line, while also doing the work that I'm most passionate about, which can be really challenging for early career academics. You know, we start to envy those tenured full professors, right? Those professors who have those passion projects where they just think bigger, you know, they get those 3 a.m. in the morning thoughts and then they can go and do it. And we're like, yeah, no, I gotta get another paper out before this baby comes in June. That's my mindset right now, right? So I think about it in terms of how do I do the things that I'm passionate about, but also ensure I'm thinking from this lens as a researcher, where there are these small projects that I can still collect some data from that makes a difference and an impact within the partnership, but also keeps me moving along in my agenda or research agenda. And so how do we then use an RPP to address educational inequities? We know there's a huge problem in this country when it comes to reading ability, right? So I am a reading researcher. All of the work that I do centers African-American children, language and literacy development, as well as children from vulnerable populations, children growing up in poverty, children with disabilities, right? And we know, based on 2022 data, 33% of American fourth graders can read proficiently, which is pretty terrible. When we think about what happens with minority populations, children of color, 17% African Americans, compared to 42% of white students can read at or above grade level in fourth grade. Neither percentage is good. 42, we can do much better. That's not even half, right? When we think about the inequities around our performance, and we know that we saw declines across the board throughout the pandemic. So what can we do, right? Scores dropped at all percentiles. So think about a reading assessment that's done, and you have students who fall at the 10th percentile, the 25th, the 50th, the 70th, and the 90th. Scores decreased at every percentile except the 90th. That means that only the children who were amazing, top tier, could already do all the things you wanted them to do as readers, those were the only ones who saw increases in performances. 30 states saw declines in fourth grade reading performance from 2019 to 2022, right? So we know that there is a huge issue that's happening. And I'll take our last 15 minutes together or so to talk about our local solution, which is the Village. And so the Village is the Community Engagement and Outreach Division over at the Center for Reading Research. It is a relatively new division, only having been around for a little over 3 years. And we like to think of it as a place where, founded by myself and Dr. Nicole Patton-Terry, as I mentioned earlier, where we really wanted to take a localized approach to how we create, support, and sustain these RPPs. And so we have these C's that you see here on the screen, right? These are the ways in which we partner with people. And so the first is we connect. That may mean that a partner reaches out and they want to know something about best practices. They want some information. A school may say, hey, we're trying to decide if this new curriculum that we want to use is the best one. I can connect them to different resources and materials that will help them see, hey, there are websites that do this. I don't have to like make it up, right? I can connect them to resources or even to other people across our entire university system, right? They may have an issue related to STEM. They may have a math related kind of a question. That's not my ministry, my lane, and I know that, but there's an entire university. There's someone who may be able to support, right? So we connect them to the information that they need that can lead to better outcomes. The second C is champion. That's the important part that really allows partnerships to thrive. And that means I'm going to support the events of our partners, right? I can't hold all the events, just like last week, there was Storybook Village at the Capitol for Children's Week, right? FCRR and the Village can't host that. I mean, we could, but we don't. We don't have the time to do that because we are faculty and students who have all these other things. But we can surely participate by bringing a book to life, volunteering some of our time, and also giving efforts to literacy nights at local schools, participating in parent literacy conferences, by providing evidence-based materials and resources. We can champion the events that they're having already. There's a lot of amazing work that partners are doing all across Leon County. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, but what we can do is be of support and champion those events, right? And then the next C is collaborate, of course. That's where the true research happens. How do we collaborate and meet their needs and build and design studies based on their interests? And then finally, commitment. We can't do any of these other 3 C's without showing that there's a level of commitment there, where it means if I say I'm going to be there and show up, that's what I'll do. And so our largest RPP within the Village is a combination or a partnership between Leon County Schools and the Village, as I mentioned, where it's the first of its kind with Leon County Schools, called the Read Up Partnership. And our priorities are 3-pronged. So of course, we're a reading research center, so we focus on reading achievement and outcomes. How do we ensure that the kids that are within our local community are performing? We can't have an internationally known center for reading right here in Tallahassee, and I drive past schools every day on my way to work that have failing or very poor grades when it comes to reading. For me, just as a person, that doesn't work for me, especially when I know that these are schools filled with children of color, right? That does not work for me. So one of our biggest things is we're going to focus on reading achievement. Next, early learning. We know the importance of pouring into children as soon as possible, but not just children, their whole families, right? Thinking about it from a community-based perspective. What are the things we can do even before the child gets here? And then I'm an SLP, special education, right? How do we think about our children who may have disabilities, communication disorders? These are our 3 priorities that we work with most closely, and we've designed individual projects that target those 3 priority areas. We have a wide range of partners. It's not just the school district. We work with the public media station, WFSU, our public library, opening nights with the arts. We create materials to support the educational events that happen through opening night. So whenever there's a play or a show or performance that's directed towards a younger audience, we create materials that go along with it that can be used within schools, all for free. One of my favorites is Sister Friends. It's a national organization where we have a Tallahassee chapter that focuses on maternal health outcomes for Black women in particular, because we know that Black women have some of the poorest maternal health outcomes in our country. And so Sister Friends is an organization where we work to support them moms who are pregnant even before baby comes around. That's around things that they can do to help build language skills, communication, and in the first year, healthy language skills. And so many of these other partners who you see here on the screen. And so some implementation models. The other part of my job is really, really fun, right? Like I said, this last year has been filled with opportunities to do the research, which I'll talk about first, but then to also engage in some really, really fun projects. And so if you've been to any of our local libraries lately, especially the ones that have parks connected to it, like the Eastside Branch or Fort Braden or Wakulla, you may see story trails like this where you can walk a mile and there are actually books that you can walk with your little people, and there are engaging questions you can ask as you read the story together. We've been a part of selecting the books and creating the materials that go into these trails, but we've done research as well. Based on the needs of our partners, we've done things like when COVID hit and our partners said, we want to make sure kids keep reading over while school is out and over the summer. We created the Please Read program where we literally mailed diverse children's books as well as extension activities weekly to over 200 families from Title I schools in Leon County, right? We have, we've had partners say, we want to build up capacity in our literacy coaches, in our teachers. We've conducted professional learning communities where we've seen massive changes in terms of foundational knowledge about how kids learn best how to read. Because we know that every person, and you may not know this or think about this, but every person who goes into teaching or in education and maybe in a classroom within a local school, they did not have a degree or background in education. And so these are sometimes people who are responsible for teaching something that is going to be completely important for how children perform over the rest of their academic career. The current project we're working on, which one of my doc students is actually going to discuss in the lightning talk, so I will not say a lot about it, but we are working with the local library where we're actually, we conducted a study at the end of the fall semester where we actually trained librarians on the science of reading. We observed local story times, did training sessions with them, and she's going to share the results. They're amazing, they were great, they were positive, and we already see the differences in terms of it's not just what happens in the family, what happens at home, what happens in the classroom. We named it the village for a reason, because it takes more than just these individual entities to ensure that all kids learn to read and to be successful. And so engaging community stakeholders like librarians who actually get to see little people come to them weekly for story time, how do we ensure what they do models best practices for families, right? We create products. We're doing literacy leadership boot camps throughout the state of Florida. These kiosks that you'll see on the left are in every single school in Leon County that features age-appropriate resources for parents and families. We've even created YouTube videos featuring families doing these kinds of literacy activities with our own kids, right? To show that these are things that you can do at home, and we're here to support you in doing them. And then my biggest passion project this year has been these Book Nook bundles that have literally just been dropped off at Leon County libraries this week. They're being cataloged, and these Book Nook bundles will be in every branch, all 7 branches of our local public library, where families will be able to check out 25 different titles that feature a diverse children's book, as well as some extension activities and materials with best practices for what to do when you're reading a book with a child and to keep that conversation going. So, what's the common factor between our 3 programs, right? Our college is made of course, CSD, but also communication and information. And as I sat there, I thought, what's the common factor? What's the thread that unites us? Because very often, well, and when we think about it, most often, CSD is never in the College of Communication, right? It's not typically where you find our programs housed. But when you think about the common threads, one of them is connection. In all of our fields, the connections that we make with others are extremely important to our outcomes and the goals that we set. And so my call to action to you as I close is to consider your personal research interests, right? You've heard a bit about RPPs. You've heard a bit about how I've been a part of doing this work here locally at FSU and in the Tallahassee community. How can you utilize some of these elements that I've described today? Who are the partners that you can engage with, right? Start to think about who are some of the people, that you can engage with to continue the work that you're doing. And then what impact do you want your work to have in your small corner of the world? I'm a firm believer that while we may not be able, I don't necessarily need to be a research superstar or rock star. And that's the way I decide to try to focus and hone into my work. And then finally, how can you connect with diverse voices and perspectives to meet the biggest needs of your field? I started with one of my favorites, and I'm going to end with my second favorite, Zora Neale Hurston. Research is formalized curiosity. It is poking and prying with a purpose. My goal for you is to hope that all of your research will have intentionality, that it will have purpose, that it will have authenticity as you build connection and establish partnerships. There are a few references. I think they're going to send out the slides at the end, and you can follow me on all things social all over the place. And if we have a few minutes, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, Marcia, or we can move into our next section.
Thank you, Lakeisha. That was so informative. I've worked on RPPs in the school library context and found this book by Penwell and Gallagher that I put in the chat to be really informative and a good basis. But RPPs are so important, not just to build that community collaboration, but to help people think outside of the randomized controlled trial in a more formative paradigm where everybody benefits from educational improvements right away. So
absolutely, that's one of the biggest parts, right? I think it's important to know that we need all forms of research, right? We need the RCTs, we need the people doing these large scale, massive studies. But I think it's also really, really important that we have the people like us, like you said, who are doing this work that we know will be impactful today for these students, these families, this community partner, this school year, right? That's the way I like to think about the work that I do. What can I do that will be most impactful right now?
And that's that way. So as we think about how to leverage the skills we have to improve the communities around us. Are there questions from the audience that may have been sparked by Lakeisha's presentation? We do have a few minutes. You're getting lots of virtual applause, I see, which is great.
Thank you all for your feedback in the chat. I appreciate it.
All right, well, I don't see any questions popping.
I see a few hands raised.
Marsha, we got a
great.
couple questions.
Okay, well then, yeah, that was so subtle with the raising of the hands. So I am going to go to Anissa, and then I'm going to go to Larry. Anissa, please take it away. Maybe this is going to be a chat question.
Or maybe we start with Larry. I think he unmuted.
Okay, well then, Larry, while Anissa's getting some details dealt with, why don't we go to you? Take it away, Larry.
Yeah, you always forget to unmic, and so that's why I did it ahead of time, so I wouldn't start talking without doing it. So I really enjoyed your presentation. I thought it was a really great overview of the challenges that you've got in building these partnerships, and I appreciate that. I think we're currently going through the same thing, only initially in information technology instruction. And I think we're trying to figure out how to do this across the Florida Gulf Coast. So the 8 coastal counties impacted by Deepwater Horizon.
Mhm.
And so I'm wondering if there are some opportunities for us to collaborate on just the issue of building these partnerships. I know there's also a huge effort within the College of Medicine as they're trying to expand out. And so, just sharing ideas and thoughts,
Yeah.
and then ultimately contacts, because by the time, if we're even a quarter as successful as you've been, we will be really engaged with partners across the Panhandle. And it might give us some more opportunities to have a bigger impact on Florida. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. You are way too kind. But I feel that there are, thankfully, like you mentioned, the College of Medicine, throughout the university from the top down, there's been an increased focus on community engagement. Both myself, Dr. Carla Wood from CSD, I'm sure there may be some people from communication and information who may be a part of that community engagement and outreach committee at the university level, but we're working and they're creating a database that will actually have a lot of this information. Who are the partners that you're working with? Who are the contacts? How do we ensure, one, that we're also building capacity for people to do this work, right? Because everybody just can't come in and say, hey, let me get the person that you're working with at this place, because I want to ensure that we keep the partnerships that we've built in such a way to where they don't then get harmed, right? So we want to ensure that we also build capacity on the researcher side around how to do this in respectful, culturally sensitive, and appropriate ways that can be impactful. But I think that there are for sure some ways, maybe Larry, that we can talk a little bit more about collaboration, about how we've started to expand some of our work. We try to be intentional about staying within the local area, just because there's so much need here, but there's also a lot of things that we do across the state. So we can for sure talk a little bit more about that.
yeah, I think one of the things you mentioned, we tried to find a university effort to create a database that was doing all this stuff, and failed miserably over the course of a year. And so ultimately, we went to ITS and asked them if they would create an instance of Salesforce for us to track our contacts, both the organizations and the people, and then our activities with them. And I viewed it kind of the same way that you do development work when you're fundraising, except you're after the time and talent part of things, not the money. And so I love to have that discussion a little bit more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that question. And I'll really quickly answer Anissa's question because I know we need to get to our amazing students in their lightning talks. What are the challenges when engaging with partners? Are there partners who resist or could not accept the collaboration? That happens. And I think most often what we see in some of our partnerships is that the partner may not be ready for the deep work that has to happen, especially around educational research, and especially when it comes to reading achievement. In a lot of the schools that we work in where kids are performing so poorly, the school's literally on fire. There are all these things. And when we come in with our approach, we need to start planning this before the school year even starts. So if we're starting mid-school year, we're already behind the game. If we need to do training and need to do all these other things. And sometimes partners simply aren't ready or don't have the systems in place on their end to be as engaged. And I think our role as the R, the researchers in this, is to provide them with the information, do that needs assessment, let them know what we can and are maybe able to accomplish. But then it's also important to know when you may need to step away from the partnership, allow them to create the systems that may need to be put into place first. And then we can always revisit it. So we've had that happen, unfortunately. What advice would I give to doctoral students who are interested in building RPPs in their first tenure track position? Specifically, what might they be able to negotiate at the start of their career to support development? Well, for those who are currently doctoral students, I'd say the first thing you should do is get involved and volunteer, or if you have to do an apprenticeship in your program, get involved with a current RPP so you can really see what the day-to-day grind is, right? See how this work is, because it is very different than traditional research, and it is very different to see how different labs work. So my doctoral students have to do apprenticeships in several different labs, so they get to see different viewpoints. And I have students who come to me, so I would definitely say get involved by volunteering or spending some time, some efforts, getting involved in a project that's aligned with your area, but it's doing RPP type work. And then if you want to negotiate at the start of their career, one of the things that I think about was a reduced course load, for sure, because it takes time, like I said, to build those partnerships. So whatever they can do around a reduced course load, maybe that's a 1-1 or a 1-2, or maybe in their first semester, they don't have as much upfront time kind of building courses, right? And they have the time to support labs within their startup plans. Also, the funds that they would need to get a small partnership off the ground, right? So thinking about what would it take for you to create a really, really small scale study, thinking about the budget, what kind of equipment you would need. I would want to negotiate those kind of things early on so that when you do get that partner and you've made that part work, you have a small pot of funding that you can do a really small study, and then you could apply for internal funding through your university to do that next step in the project or start to look for external funding. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Marsha. We are over my time, and I want to make sure you get to the lightning talks.
Thank you. This was so informative, and obviously I think you picked up on maybe a nascent interest that people weren't even sure that they had, but and I think it's the perfect segue into the lightning talks, where we're going to be hearing about other people's research ideas and collaborations and thinking about that maybe through an RPP paradigm. So thank you so much, Lakeisha. Appreciate all of your time and generosity with the questions. It's just wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, well then, why don't we transition over to the next thing? I'm gonna, let me see. I am just going to move us over here to the lightning talk breakout rooms. And And I'm going to hand it over to Caroline Stratton, who has really been kind of masterminding the whole affair here. So, Caroline, can you see the lightning talk breakout slide that you prepared? And
Yes, I can.
okay, great.
Awesome. All right. If you believe you are giving a lightning talk, which I hope you know what you're doing here. I have sent you an email in the last 24 hours to let you know which room you're in, but you'll also see your last name up here in case you have forgotten in your excitement which room you're headed to. So here's what we're about to do. Maybe two things we need to clarify. So everybody is going to go put themselves in the correct breakout room. That's our first piece. That it looks like those are available for us. You'll see they're called future research projects, currently in progress, or completed and current. So we're all going to go to the right place. Presenters should be able to share their slides, and they also know which order. They've been sent a message about the order that we're doing this in, and you'll have one of us in there to just help keep things running and try to keep everybody to about 5 minutes. The other piece to know, which Art should tell us, is he's dropped a couple of links into the chat with a QR code and a link, because we, the audience, are voting for exemplary lightning talks today because we have prizes available. Art, do you want to tell us anything about the poll?
Sure. Yep. So those of you who are participants, we encourage you to also complete the survey. The survey will have the names listed of each presenter, broken out by breakout room, separated by, so you can both participants and folks in the audience, you can go in, grab the QR code there. You can along the way, you can go ahead and rate them, or you can wait, take notes, and rate until the end. Those of you in the audience, if you want to jump back and forth between rooms, if you have friends or doctoral students, you can do that. The survey will allow you to rate presentations in different breakout rooms, but we'll close the survey about 12:10 or so, about the time we start the debrief, or maybe shortly afterwards. So please be sure to go in and rate your favorites. Well, you rate all of them, and we will we'll figure out who the favorites are, and then we'll announce the awards after Dr. Constantino's talk later today.
Okay, so with that, go check out the breakout rooms feature of Zoom, and you should have the ability to move yourself to the place where you want to be. So speakers, head to that room that you're supposed to be in, and we'll see you there to get this all going.
I can leave this slide here or go to the QR code. I wanted to make sure people remembered where they were going. So when it's time to switch to the next one, we can do that. To the QR code. We good? I see lots of quizzical faces. See what's happening in the chat. Ari, I'm looking for the link that Art had put in earlier, and I'm going to paste it right in for you. It's right here. Okay, everybody, how we doing? Getting to where you need to be? I think our folks organizing this piece have probably transitioned to a breakout room. You can move yourself to a breakout room as well. I'm going to stay here and just make sure people who come in have somewhere to go.
Hello, it's Michelle. I'm in the car. I'm in the car having left Janet's academic leaders group meeting. So where should I be?
you are welcome to step into a lightning talk room.
All right.
Those are the breakout rooms, but if you're on phone, that might be kind of tough to do. So in that event, how about if you maybe return to us 12-ish and hear the debrief from that, and as we transition into Chris's talk.
All righty. That works out perfectly. Thank you very much. I'll see you then.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, Marsha. Bye.
Hey, Carla. Would you like to go to a breakout room?
Hi, Marcia. I was literally just trying to chat with you to see. Yeah, can I observe or really are they just observing each other?
Oh, no. There are there's all kinds of people in the breakout rooms in addition to the contestants.
Okay, then if I could do room 1, that would be awesome.
Okay. Yeah, I think you can move yourself there, but I'm happy to put you there.
Oh, I see how to join. Sorry. All right.
Hi, Kelvis. Everyone's in the lightning talk breakout rooms now. You're certainly welcome to move yourself to a room.
Sure.
I'm happy to move you too if you're not familiar with how to do that. So,
Oh, I got it. Thank you.
okay, great. Hi, Shazine. Hey, Shazine, are you just moving from room to room or are you back in the main room? Okay, guess you're moving from room to room. Okay. Hi, Latif. Are you just moving from room to room? Hi, Steve. We're still lightning in the breakout rooms.
Okay, when is the next thing coming back? I can join for like a keynote coming up.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's probably gonna be like 12:15.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll try to join for that then.
Okay, do you want me to send you an email when it's about to happen?
Okay, sure, that'd be great.
Okay.
Good. I enjoyed I was online for like the first 20 minutes or so. First 25 minutes. It seemed to go very well. So you had a good introduction.
Yeah, and good turnout.
Good,
So,
very good.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
See you in
we'll
about
see you in a bit then.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye. Hi, Sana.
Hi, Marcia.
People are in their lightning talk breakout rooms. Were you
I
in one?
know I was interrupted because I have an IT guy working on my laptop, so I didn't want to miss Chris's talk, so that's why I came back.
Okay.
Maybe they're about to finish. What do you think?
I think maybe I would try closer to noon.
Okay.
Yeah, because
I'll be back. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just telling, there was just 7 people in each room. That's 35 minutes of presentation, then transition time, then Q&A. So
Okay.
yeah, that's why I'm thinking noon, 12:05.
Okay, perfect. Sorry for the interruption. Thank you so much for all
problem.
you're doing. This is really terrific. I attended Lakeisha's talk and I enjoyed it very much. I'll be back.
Okay, come back. Yeah.
Thanks,
Great.
Marsha. Bye.
Bye. Hi, Chris. People are in breakout rooms doing lightning talks. If you just are joining us, you're welcome to move yourself to one of the three of them. I'm just here getting people to the right spot if they join late or get kicked out or something like that. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Okay, well, as folks are filtering back from the breakout rooms, just a quick reminder that you can vote for the presentations that you really enjoyed using the QR code there on the slide. There's also the link written out there as well.
It's also available in the chat if you want to just hyperlink to it as well.
Thanks, Art. Yep, that's very handy. So let's get everybody voting if you haven't voted already. Just going to put my mute on quickly. I have neighbors doing roof work, of course, today, and the garbage man coming through. Looks like you had 13 people in your room, Art. That's a good crowd.
Yeah, at the height we had 17. So yeah, we had a fantastic slate of presenters and presentation. So it was, yeah, spot on, bang on, good time.
Excellent. Yeah, I see folks from other rooms are filtering back in too, which is wonderful. If you're just joining us, if you are just joining us, make sure you take a moment to vote. Art put the links in the chat, but there's also, you know, you can point your phone at the slide as well, whatever works best for you.
I was just going to say, we had some questions in our room about if you presented, should you vote? And the answer that I think we have for you is, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. You're a people.
Yeah.
It's people's choice. Yeah. And sometimes you just got to vote for yourself. That's the way this business works. You got to be your own biggest fan.
Art, you were with the completed and some current folks?
Yeah, indeed. Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we were saying earlier at peak attendance, we were up to 17 folks there, which was great.
Yeah, I think we did about the same. Everybody just did a lovely job being mindful of time too.
Yeah,
which you love to see.
Ours as well. And the truth is, to only be able to give one award per school is a sad and difficult choice that are going to be have to be made, because they were all 7 in my room were just fantastic. Those of you who are here, you should know. I thought they were all fantastic. Good job.
Absolutely. And I keep saying it, but I can't say how excited I cannot overstate how excited we were that you wanted to do this and that you were willing to share this with us. What a wonderful surprise, and just speaks to the strength of our community. And we hope that you felt really supported today.
And I hope so too, because everyone was really excited about these talks, and it looks like Katie's room is still wrapping up. So I'm sure they'll be here in just a moment. Must be a rip roaring Q&A there happening. Caroline, are you able to inquire with Katie how things are going?
Yep, I'll go pop in there to see what's happening and corral them. I'll be back.
All right, very good. Well, while we are waiting here, don't forget to cast your vote, because it is the people's choice. Everybody is eligible to vote. Please do. They've got a lot of good advisors in that first room too. So I am sure there's lots of good stuff happening in there. Okay, we are gonna transition into something, into the next thing, which is a bit of a report out and debrief. In just a moment here, we're just waiting for one more group to just kind of bring its discussion to a close. I see folks are leaving there. Okay, they're leaving there pretty quickly. Rejoining this room. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. As we transition, please take an opportunity to vote. We've got the QR code both on the slide and in the chat, as well as the link, and everybody can vote, so please do. All right. Okay, I'm just going to take a quick look, and it looks like everybody is back from the room. So Caroline, is it okay if I just go ahead and press the close all rooms button? Are we going to
I
need?
believe so. It does not look like anybody is hanging out in one of those rooms and is about to be surprised. Let's close them on up.
Okay. All right. Then just make sure nobody accidentally wanders back into a breakout room. Good. Okay.
Can
Wow.
you repost it to the chat? Because the chat looks empty if we left and came back.
All right. Okay. Art, yeah. Could you repost your QR code and your link? And that's the same stuff that's on the slide as well. But thank you for that reminder, because that is a very interesting feature of Collaborate.
And we got a question too in the chat about when we're presenting at conferences, do we use slides, for example, that, you know, have an FSU emblem everywhere or non-standard? I don't know that I'm the best person to answer that question. Marcia, you want to weigh in?
Yes. So I make sure the FSU logo appears on my slides somewhere, along with any funding agency who may be underwriting the research that's represented in those slides. But I really like to have a look and feel that just feels right for the content, that feels right for the conference. Sometimes conferences have their own templates that they like you to use because they're trying to achieve some continuity on their end. So I would say that just making sure there's some kind of FSU identity on your slides is probably the most important part, and just taking the lead from what the conference organizers are expecting. Your posters, though, may have a little bit more of a defined structure. So there is an FSU poster template structure, or actually a few different kinds that can be very helpful too. So does that get at the question?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. All right. Okay, everybody. Well, it seems like everybody's in. Everybody's had a chance to vote or at least see the link. So that's really good. So I think, why don't we move on over to the next piece, which is a little bit of a debrief. The lightning talks are complete, which I'm excited to hear about them because I was traffic controlling in the main room. So I didn't get to experience those along with you. But now Art Rain is going to lead us in highlighting ideas and themes related to transforming the future through CCI's research and creative activities. So over to you, Art.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Marcia. I definitely want to keep this brief because, as I told my group, I've seen Dr. Constantino's TED Talk on a topic that I think he'll be brushing up against today, and I'm so excited to hear what he has to say that I'll keep this quite brief. But I have been reflecting on both the theme that we have been interrogating today and just kind of the moment in my own life, kind of looking back at my own career at FSU so far, 23 years here. And the word transformation really is apt. We do transformative work. The institution that we serve has transformed incredibly. The lives of students that we brush up against every day are transformed by what we do. And as I think about that in relation to the future, I really was reflecting on Dr. Johnson's earlier words about how the future will truly be defined by collaboration and partnership. And at least in our breakout session, that was reflected in several of the presentations, most particularly by Dr. Johnson's student, Shaylin, who was talking and giving us a little more insight into the RPP project with the Leon County schools that she was working on. But the importance of partnerships and sustained long-term building of relationships are so important in all of the work that we do, not only our research endeavors, but the work that we do in the classroom, and also as members of the meeting the service mission of this institution and the ones that PhD students you will be going to, or the organizations you'll be going to. Also, I was struck by Dr. Johnson's call for us to be active, be involved in active and intentional and empathic engagement with others. And surely that is community partners, but it's also with your research collaborators, it's with your colleagues, it's with your students, it's with those around you. And those key words that she brought out: listening, right? Being there, being in it, always showing up, leaning into trust. Again, that was reflected in so many of the talks that I ran across in the last talk, Anisha's talk, about mothers who are both PhD students and mothers, and their struggles in navigating the waters of doing so was a particular marker to that for me as well. And then finally, the notion that the future is coming. It's bright, but it's also, there are clouds that remain on the horizons now that likely will carry over, right? Our world is filled with inequality now, and it very well may be in the future. So finding out how we are going to be able to address that in the future, whether it's with racial lines and divides, Cindy Stewart's talk in our group on Emmett Till, and the needed reminder to understand the story of the civil rights struggle in the US was a great example of that. As was Kwan's discussion of greenwashing and climate change issues. There are so many ways that we can transform the future, and we are going to need to. And the work that we're doing throughout our college is just a really powerful reminder of the role that we as academics, the institution of the academy, but more importantly, we as citizens, individuals, friends, neighbors can have as agents of change in transforming the future. So those were a couple of things that came to my mind. I was wondering if Caroline and Katie, you had some thoughts along those same lines that kind of popped up in your own talks.
Caroline, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm just going to say really fast that the 7 women who presented their research in the research in progress room were all across the map in terms of how in progress the work was. and all across the map in terms of how they decided to talk about it to us. But it was so impressive to see that range of things that they were interested in, and to see that across schools that our work is intelligible to each other, that we can understand what others are doing. We can make arguments about why it should be interesting to each other. We definitely saw that in our chat too, of thinking about themes that across us that we could all be interested in manipulation of AI images. We could all be interested in how gender is depicted around leadership. We could all be interested. We could all bring some sort of lens to that. And it was just, without calling out any names, is deeply proud of everybody. Just so cool to see that what kind of energy we get when we talk about our research with each other outside of our usual school silos.
So I was in the future room, and I chose to be in that room because I love how it provides an opportunity for students to share the work that they're just now thinking about. And when we think about the theme of this research day, transforming the future, having these future presentations, I think was kind of right on the nose. So what I loved about the 7 talks that were in our room is that they all centered around kind of improving outcomes. So whether or not these outcomes are related to well-being or to communication, all of the work that is being done has the great opportunity to transform our future across these well-being and communication outcomes. So all super interesting projects, and I cannot wait to hear about what they find. Thank you all. Thank you to the Lightning Talk presenters. You came to this with kind of a short window of opportunity to kind of think about it, and I'm just so impressed with the work that you shared with us. Thank you.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments as well. A fantastic job for everyone that I saw. Just to summarize, right, or to wrap up, Dr. Johnson asked the question about these 3 schools all together in one college, and surely there are historical institutional reasons for why that is. But this emphasis on, as she brought up, connections, and as Dr. Lansford just pointed to, these positive outcomes, making the world leaving the world a better place than what we found it. But that was the thread that ran through the 7 talks that I listened to this morning. It's been a thread that's run through the 7 talks that I've heard for the last 23 years by my colleagues in both schools. And it makes me proud to be involved in an institution that truly is being intentional and with a strong emphasis on diversity and empathy, transforming the future. So excellent job all.
Well, thanks to all of you for moderating the sessions, and thanks to all of you. I'm going to second Dr. Stratton's comment in the chat for participating. You didn't have to, but you did, and it was awesome, and everybody benefited. So congratulate yourselves as well. Okay, well then, on this very positive note, let's
Marcia, just before we introduce Dr. Constantino, we're going to close down the People's Choice survey here in about 2 minutes, so that we can tabulate the results. So be sure to vote quickly, and thanks so much.
All right, actually good timing, because now Steve McDowell has rejoined us. Great. Okay, well then, I think that with no further ado, friends, if you were with us last year, you had the opportunity to hear 2 fantastic scholars from other universities, sorry about that, speak and give us really solid ground on which to on which to reflect on how COVID-19 has shaped the last few years of our lives. But this year we chose to keep it a little closer to home because we wanted to really celebrate the passion and expertise we have right here at CCI. With that in mind, please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Dr. Chris Constantino. Dr. Constantino is an assistant professor at the School of Communication Science and Disorders here at FSU. I'm gonna just let somebody in real quick. And he studies the lived experience of stuttering and how that interacts with culture and society. As a speech language pathologist who teaches about stuttering and counseling, Dr. Constantino researches ways to improve the embodied and social experiences of stuttering, including developing therapies that make the experience of the stuttering, this is the phrase that got me, more joyful. Today, Chris will share with us stuttering, vulnerability, and intimacy, in which he will show us what it's like to live with stuttering and how the disability has opened opportunities to have true human connections. This talk was given at a TEDx event previously using the TED format. So I think that we are in for a real treat today because I can't imagine a better speaker for us to welcome and address our theme of transforming the future. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Chris Constantino. And Chris, I turn it over to you.
All right. Hello, everybody. That was a very flattering introduction. I'm blushing a little bit. Thank you very much. I am going to stop the sharing just so we can see each other. Before I go into my talk, I think it's really fascinating how much this talk, I think, dovetails into a lot of the other talks I heard today. Dr. Johnson started by sort of presenting RPP as a radical switch in how we think about research and who the research is serving, right? And she talked about that moment of silence when you meet with your potential partners in the community and you say, you know, how can we help you, right? What are your needs? And how they're surprised by that, how they're not used to being asked that question. And so this idea of considering the needs of those whom we're researching rather than our needs, I think is a really powerful change in perspective. And I heard a lot of that in the lightning rounds too. There was a lot of focus on intersectionality and the experiences of people of different races, ethnicities, gender expressions, nationalities. And something that when Dr. Lansford was talking about the sort of her group's summary of what she thought a lot of the students in her breakout room were talking about, it was improving outcomes, right? And I'm a speech language pathologist. We work clinically with people with communication disorders. I think something I've been sort of on a soapbox about for a while is that the way we improve outcomes is by privileging the experience of the people who we're working with, right? That by finding out what their needs are and not assuming we know what their needs are, we can do better by them, right? And it's not always obvious. I'm going to be talking about stuttering today, and I think what I'm going to be suggesting is actually a bit counterintuitive, right? That sometimes if you see people stuttering, you hear people stuttering, the obvious way to help that person is to get rid of their stuttering, right? And I'm gonna offer an alternative to that as we talk. Emmett Till came up earlier. He was also a stutterer, and so in addition to suffering racial discrimination. I think he also suffered able-bodied discrimination. And so I think all this stuff ties together. A society that doesn't make a room for people of different races, of different gender expressions, also doesn't make room for people of different abilities. And it's wonderful to see all the interest in our students in trying to write some of that. And so, as I mentioned a moment ago, I'm going to be talking about stuttering. I'm also a person who stutters. Stuttering is genetic, and many people who stutter will do so their entire lives. There's no known cure for stuttering. I don't know how much I'll stutter during this talk. One of the hallmarks of stuttering is that it varies tremendously from situation to situation, from day to day, week to week. I generally don't stutter as much as I used to. And ironically, I'm usually fairly fluent when I'm talking about stuttering. When I'm in my job, it's a sort of a low, I'm allowed to stutter here because I'm talking about stuttering. And so it doesn't happen very often. But to give you an idea of like what I mean by stuttering and how my speech historically sounded, I think my speech used to sound a lot like it used to sound a lot like my speech used to sound a lot like this. And it's not that I don't stutter anymore. I do. It's that I react to the feeling of stuttering differently than I used to. And I want to talk about that feeling because I think that's a big part of, as Dr. Lansford was saying earlier, improving outcomes. Most of you probably know what stuttering sounds like, right? It's present in the media going back decades, right? You can think of Porky Pig many decades ago, stuttering. But I think most people aren't familiar with what stuttering feels like. And so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that. Stuttering, it feels like you're stuck, like you've lost control of your mouth, your tongue, your lips, your vocal folds, almost like somebody has like hacked into your mouth and is controlling it from the outside. Imagine that you're writing a note by hand, and every once in a while, a ghost pushes your hand. That initial push, that feeling of losing control, that's the stutter. That would get annoying quick. You'd have stray lines all over your paper. Things would look crossed out that weren't supposed to be. The note you were writing would be sloppy and hard to read. Now imagine you lived in a world where the primary way people communicated was by writing notes. And there was an expectation of perfect handwriting. Right? There was little tolerance of differences in penmanship. That world equated an inability to write neatly with an inability to think neatly, or perhaps an inability to think at all. What do you think you'd start doing in your writing? You start trying to anticipate when that ghost was about to push your arm. You'd be vigilant in trying to detect any hint of the ghost. You'd probably carry a lot of tension and stress. You'd be writing differently even when you weren't being pushed. Right? That tension, stress, and anticipation would seep into every letter you wrote. You'd be rigid, you'd be stiff, you'd be graceless. And that's when you're not getting pushed. When the ghost did push your arm, you'd fight with it, right? You'd push back. You might even lift your pen right off the page. You do any number of things to give the appearance of normal handwriting. You might even stop writing altogether. Unfortunately, all your efforts to save your handwriting would actually make it worse, because now you're changing every single letter, not just the ones that are pushed. Ultimately, when you get pushed and fight with it, the result is worse than if you had just let it happen. Stuttering is analogous. It starts out as a simple interruption to our speech, but then society punishes us. The research on stuttering and discrimination is overwhelming. Children are bullied. Adults are seen as less intelligent and less attractive. They're denied jobs and steered into non-speaking vocations. There is a tremendous amount of stigma around stuttering. So of course, we do everything within our power to try not to stutter. Right? This isn't an unreasonable reaction to that situation. We often develop convoluted and effortful reactions to the feeling of stuttering and the anticipation of stuttering. These reactions can be every bit as disruptive to our communication as the stuttering itself. For many of us, stuttering is a deeply shameful feeling. It's often our most shameful feeling. Right? It represents everything that's wrong with us. Speaking is central to who we are as humans. It's how we commune with one another, right? It's built into that word, communicate, right? Communication is how we share selves, right? I share myself with you. By communicating with you, you share yourself with me. It's how we make friends, obtain jobs, and find romance. But if I can't even tell you my name, what does that say about me? How could you ever come to really know me if you can't communicate with me? And if you can't know me, how can you love me? We also feel shame because we know we're making our stuttering worse by all the ways we react to it, right? We're not ignorant to the contradiction of our experience. By trying to avoid and suppress it, we make our speech more effortful and more struggled. We feel both shame for stuttering and for being so uncomfortable with stuttering. A famous speech therapist, Dr. Van Riper, once said, stutterers are notoriously bad at stuttering, right? Not only can we not talk right, we can't even stutter right. Stuttering is a lot like being naked. You feel exposed, unprotected, raw, vulnerable, as if you're actively and involuntarily displaying your deepest insecurities to the world, like people can see into your soul. Imagine if periodically throughout the day, your clothes just fell off, right? You're walking along the sidewalk and plop, they're around your feet. Or you're giving a presentation at work and plop, your clothes are around your ankle. Maybe you're finally working up the courage to ask out your crush and plop, your clothes are gone. I imagine you would behave differently if that was your situation. You'd probably avoid a lot of things. You may only show up in person to things that were really important. You may not go places alone because should your clothes plop, you need a buddy to hide behind. You may always be holding your clothes in place, or you may wear lots of extra clothes, or spend thousands of dollars on belts and suspender systems. The point is, you would exist differently in the world even when your clothes were on. We're using the example of physical nakedness, but there's other ways to be naked besides losing your clothes, right? Losing your clothes exposes your bodies. But what if our minds were exposed? How did it affect your life if unpredictably and at random times, people could read your mind? right? Your thoughts, feelings, emotions were all public knowledge. Right? Again, you'd probably start acting different in an attempt to protect your deepest thoughts and most personal feelings. You'd maybe avoid others. You'd especially avoid people who arouse strong feelings in you, right? Maybe people you didn't like, probably also people who you liked a lot. People you loved and people you hated. You might start distracting yourself all the time so that your thoughts are always focused on inconsequential things. The point is that, once again, to avoid being vulnerable, you'd drastically alter your life for the worse. In both of these situations, we're temporarily naked. In the first, physically, in the second, mentally. We're stripped bare and exposed for what we really authentically are. Also, in each of these situations, nothing bad is actually happening, right? Nothing is changing. Nothing is painful. The real you is just being shared with the world, right? That's it. Nonetheless, you would probably try everything within your power to prevent this exposure from happening. This is exactly how stuttering works. I mentioned at the start of this talk that it's not so much that I learned to stop stuttering as it is that I've learned to react differently to my stuttering. What we know about treating stuttering is the more we let it happen, the easier it gets. The less we fight it, the less we struggle. And this is my area of research. I study the subjective experience of stuttering. And my work shows clearly that the less we think about our stuttering, the less working memory we devote towards speaking, the less it negatively impacts us. This is, of course, easier said than done. Imagine your clothes are falling off and people are reading your mind. And I told you that the cure for what ails you is to just let it happen. Right? You'd probably tell me to go play in traffic. Right? That wouldn't be a helpful suggestion for you. What I've learned over my decades stuttering, working with others who stutter, and researching stuttering is that stuttering is easier if we have a reason to stutter. I discovered my reason to stutter, and I think in doing so, I also discovered a law of human nature. And that's what I want to share with you in this talk. So here it is, Chris's law. The more time we spend naked, the more opportunities we have for intimacy. That's the law. So what is nakedness? It's vulnerability. Vulnerability is both what makes being naked scary and what makes it enjoyable. These are two sides of the same coin. To be vulnerable is to expose yourself to risk. It is this risk which allows for intimacy. Think about the two ways I asked you to imagine yourself naked. When you're physically naked, you're exposed to the elements. You're unprotected from cold and heat, wind and rain. But I don't think that's what y'all were thinking about. Perhaps more importantly, you're exposed to the judgment of others. When you're bare, there is no way for you to hide your imperfections. Perhaps you're not in the shape you'd like to be in. You think you're too small or you're too big. Maybe you're scarred. Possibly you just don't like how you look. You are left exposed to the perceptions and judgments of other people. When you're naked, the risk you're exposed to is rejection, right? It's the same for your thoughts and feelings. If people really knew you, if you were fully transparent, what would they think? Would they still like you as a colleague? Would they still love you as a friend? Would you even be lovable? Or would you be rejected as ignorant, irrational, misguided, maybe bigoted, despicable? One side of vulnerability is risk. The other side is intimacy and communion. Intimacy works through reciprocated vulnerability. It happens only when vulnerability is mutual, when we both get naked. We make ourselves vulnerable, trusting the other will do the same. In this mutually vulnerable state, we are able to join with each other without false fronts, pretense, or artifice. It is in this state of reciprocated naked vulnerability that we truly come to know each other. I get naked, and then you choose to stay protected and safe or get naked too. Only when we're both exposed can we be intimate. If I share my thoughts and feelings and you don't, there's no connection, right? Just awkward silence. But if we both share our thoughts and feelings, then we can become friends. Inherent in an act of voluntary vulnerability is an invitation to the other to reciprocate that vulnerability. And I think if we let it, in this talk, I'm going to be talking about stuttering, but please feel free to apply this to your life wildly. If we let it, stuttering can be seen as an act of voluntary vulnerability, right? As an invitation to the other. So vulnerability is my reason for stuttering. I've learned to use my stuttering as an invitation to intimacy, and the results have been beautiful. I've had many deeply personal conversations with other people because my stuttering allowed them to feel comfortable talking with me. I once met a man in a bar with a family history of schizophrenia. He was terrified he might have it as well. He said he overanalyzes every odd or paranoid thought that he has, ever vigilant for signs and symptoms. He was comically aware that this very paranoia was a symptom of schizophrenia. He told me that because I stutter, maybe I understand what it's like to grapple with a stigmatized disorder. He didn't want to talk about this with anybody else, any of his close friends, because he didn't want them to start second guessing all of his behaviors, to start suspecting he might have schizophrenia. We talked for hours, and I made a connection I would never have made had I stayed protected and hid my stutter. People have related my stuttering to their own struggles with race, sexuality, and gender. On the flight, a woman sitting next to me heard me stutter to my flight attendant as I ordered a coffee. I'm going to interrupt this anecdote to share a strong opinion that I hold. There's one order that's appropriate when you're flying, and that is those little brown sugar cookies and a coffee, right? When you have the option of a cookie and somebody gets pretzels, that person is suspect. Don't trust that person, right? Never choose a pretzel over a cookie. Anyway, on a flight, a woman sitting next to me heard me stutter, the flight attendant, as I ordered my coffee and my cookie. She asked me what stuttering was like. She heard me struggle to get my order, and in a very sincere way said, "What's it like to stutter?" And I shared with her that exactly what I'm sharing with you, that it feels like you're stuck. Feels like something else is controlling how you speak, but that actually that's not the hard part. The hard part is the stigma. The hard part is other people's reactions. The hard part is feeling less than every time you open your mouth and needing day after day to summon the courage to just face the prejudice that exists in society. And she thought about what I was saying. She listened. And then she said, "I think I know what that's like." And she shared with me some of her own tribulations as a Black woman growing up in the United States. And we had a conversation and a connection that would never have occurred if I hadn't stuttered while ordering my coffee. I have had people share intimate details of their lives without having to prompt them or ask them. They hear me stutter and they know it's safe to open up and be vulnerable. I've come to know people better than I ever could if I had remained safe and protected, if I had kept my clothes on. The more time we spend naked, the more opportunities we have for intimacy. Least you get the wrong idea. I've also been mocked and gotten into fights for stuttering. I've been thrown out of bars many times because the bouncers or bartenders thought I was drunk, even though I had just gotten there. I've been mistreated by police, been arrested, been given unnecessary breathalyzers because they didn't believe me that I was talking the way I was talking, because that's how I always talk. But remember what I said earlier. Vulnerability only leads to communion if there's also a risk of rejection. Stuttering has not been rainbows and butterflies for me. I have been rejected. But I've also been embraced. And those moments of embrace were worth every rejection. When we get naked, sometimes we get made fun of. But sometimes people like what they see. We want control over others' perceptions of us. We groom ourselves to look a certain way, try to say the right thing at the right time, and self-analyze rather than attend to the present moment. Stuttering, and whatever your imperfection is, can be a counter to all that distraction. Not only does stuttering disarm me by temporarily wresting away control of my speech, but it also serves as a reminder to lower my shields, to pay attention to now, and to share myself with the person with whom I'm speaking. By stuttering, I can turn a vapid social interaction into potentially deep, intimate, and consequential one. Lowering my guard can cause others to lower theirs. It's a signal that the conversational space is safe. I will not be keeping score of decorum or grading etiquette. Again, this has less to do with stuttering per se than with voluntary vulnerability, which I think we can all practice. What stuttering has taught me, and what I hope it teaches you, is that this voluntary vulnerability leads to intimacy. We often think our surest path to intimacy is through curating an image and keeping up a facade that others will find attractive. We reason that once we know someone well, we can lower our defenses and show them who we really are without risking rejection. But this is a delusion, and I think stuttering exposes that. This conventional view is backwards. The path to intimacy is not through careful curation, but through reckless vulnerability. Curation may keep us safer, but it will also prevent us from being naked, and nakedness is required for intimacy. So my message to all of you is to lower your shields, embrace your authenticity, share yourself, and don't be scared of being naked. Thank you.
Chris, thank you. I'm envisioning the new CCI research campaign of Research Naked. You know,
I
they
like
used to
that.
be those party naked shirts. I think we're the Research Naked group. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. I think maybe at 12:44 we can't really take questions for Dr. Constantino. But I encourage anybody who might want to take the conversation further to reach out to Dr. Constantino through the CCI directory. There's lots of good contact information for him there, as well as for Dr. Johnson. Please continue all of these talks, because I think everybody who's contributed today is just made such a difference in helping us think about transforming the future. Chris, again, thank you so much. This was just right on time and the perfect way to kind of pull together a lot of the items we discussed today. So
Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, wow. It could be an annual event. Watch out. Well, I'm going to transition over to the next topic, which is looking at our People's Choice Award winners. All right. And hot off the press here, we have our winners. So from the School of Communication, and feel free to turn your camera on and take all the accolades that are coming your way. Pooja Plani from the School of Communication, Miguel Garcia Salas, and Christy Tim Fulkerson, a tie in Con Disorders. And Yulu from the iSchool, congratulations to all of you. Really, really nice work. And to everybody who participated, because as I said earlier, you didn't have to, but you did. And it was wonderful. And that transformed you in the process as well. So congratulations, and we will be following up with you about how to receive your awards, which is our $150 of travel funds that you can spend between now and the conclusion of the next academic year. So we will be following up with you, but congratulations to the award winners and to all the participants. Really nice work, everybody. So on the heels of this candid and heartfelt talk and all of these great accomplishments from you, just one thing is, if you do get a chance to check out Dr. Constantino's YouTube talk, make sure you read the YouTube comments, because that's where you really, wow, you get to see how people all over the world were touched by his experience in the way that he phrases it and shares it. So with that in mind, as we wind down our second annual research day, I wanted to take one more moment for CCI Research Recognition Opportunity. I think several of these folks weren't able to join us today, but each year CCI recognizes an outstanding researcher from each school and at the award ceremony, which this year was last Friday. And these three faculty inspire us all with their innovative thinking, rigorous research, and deep community commitment. So please join me in congratulating Dr. Brian Graves from School of Communication, Dr. Yunjung Kim from the School of Communication Science and Disorders, and Dr. Mia Lustria from the School of Information. So well done, all of you. Thank you so much. And thank you all for spending this time with us on a Friday, on a beautiful day. The lightning round participants and judges, so generous with your time, and our guest speakers, thank you, thank you, thank you. I know we all benefited from your passion and insightful comments. And so, you know, we like to end on a high note, and we hope you enjoyed your day. Thank you all for attending, and a special thanks to our discussion facilitators and panelists. I personally want to give a shout out to Art Rainey for being so quick on the tabulation of the voting, and Caroline Stratton and Katie Lansford for working together to make the lightning talks as seamless as possible. Thank you all. And everyone who facilitated discussions, shared advice, your generosity made this day possible. So please be on the lookout for another email that will be a link to the event evaluation. We take those very seriously. That input helped us shape today. So we hope you'll take a few minutes to share your view so that this day can keep getting better and better, meeting your needs. And elevating your work too. So at this point, I bid you all a wonderful Easter weekend, or wrap up to your Passover celebrations. We have a few moments here that maybe our speakers are going to hang around if you wanted to have some one-on-one, but we have concluded our formal program, and thank you all for coming. It's just been a spectacular day. So Happy Research Day, everybody. Research naked.